those goosebumps every time, yeah, 713. Through the 281, yeah, I'm riding. Why they on me? Why they on me? I'm flying, sipping low-key. I'm sipping low-key and honest, rider. I get those goosebumps every time.
Newcastle United.
I get those goosebumps every time. I need the hype. Throw that to the side. I get those goosebumps every time. Yeah, when you're not around me, throw that to the side. I get those goosebumps every time.
Up the mugs. Yes, sir. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Loaded Mag NUFC. We are back again on this Wednesday evening to talk all things Newcastle United and, of course, all things transfers. And we've got a fantastic guest, friend of the channel, to all speak about what's been going on in Newcastle United, because it's never a dull day as a Newcastle United fan. But boys, that's Chris. How are you on this Wednesday evening? How's things?
All good. Busy day. Just back from the training pitch, actually, with my little boy, Gaelic training. But yeah, just in the door. So yeah, looking forward to this all day now. Because we love getting Graeme on and having a bit of a chat about lots of things and a bit of banter as well, backing over. Graeme can give it as well as take it. So even some people don't like Graeme. And some of the comments to see, we always enjoy having a chat with Graeme. And Graeme knows his stuff too. We might get into a bit of that, but because we could very easily close down some of those comments. But Chris, how are you?
Good, mate. Yeah, really busy day in work. But yeah, I cannot lie. I think I said this to you earlier. Like, I've been looking forward to this show all day. Always an absolute pleasure to have Graeme on. And I think you know, credit to Pete. You know, Pete lines a lot of these shows up, and credit to Pete, because I think this has come at a really good time. I think having the likes of Graeme on this evening, just to give us a little bit of clarity, tell us where certain things are, I think it'll be great. So yeah, really looking forward to the show, and on a personal level, I am absolutely fine. Pete, how are you doing, fella?
Busy, non-stop, not just at work but at home as well, because the builders are in. The work is beginning.
Davey's dead.
I've been clearing out, come home from work, clearing out load of stuff, ready for the builders to get to work. So yeah, it's been a bit of a non-stop, which is why right on the minute I was still working away trying to get these things ready for tonight. But look, people in the chat, we've got nearly 250 of you already. We're only 3 minutes in. Make sure you get those likes in. So I can see Sophie B's in the chat. So she's going to be pushing you people in the chat. Make sure you're getting those likes in. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe as well. Welcome in. Get your questions in for Graeme. We will come to a question section of this show. But let's not beat around the bush. Let's get to it. Let's get the main man in. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome back TBR's own Graeme Bailey. Welcome back in. How you doing?
Welcome, Graeme.
Evening, guys. Good, thank you. I'm very good, actually.
Oh,
Good.
any particular reason? Are you well rested?
I'm well rested. My club is Geordieless at the helm, so I'm very happy about that. You know, I'm glad Steve Gibson has made that decision. It needed to be made. We've regressed massively. A lot of people outside the Northeast, probably not you guys so much, because you probably know Middlesbrough fans and have sensed how bad it's been. You know, from that first season where we reached the playoffs, and it wasn't arguably his team, where we had Chuba Akpom, etc. And all we had to do to get promoted, if you remember, guys, was beat Coventry and Luton to make the Premier League, and we couldn't even do that. And then, yeah, we finished outside the playoffs last year, and then 10th this season, which was an absolute disgrace. And we were absolutely terrible most of the season, square pegs in round holes all over the shop, and not a small budget either. Middlesbrough are not one of the tiny teams in this division, by any stretch of the imagination, guys. So, yeah, it's been it's been a while coming. Obviously, they've done a review. Kieran Scott, the sporting director, is still in charge. He's going to be doing the transfers, and yeah, I don't think we'll have to wait too long for the next manager. Few names suggested: Steve Cooper, Rob Edwards, John Dal Thomason, former Newcastle legend. But I'd be surprised if it wasn't Steve Cooper.
Do you feel the pressure, Graeme, actually now with Sunderland back in, or back for a while anyway in the Premier League? Do you feel the pressure that Middlesbrough need to get back in there as well?
I think that probably put a bit more pressure on Steve Gibson. It just underlined what a horrific season Middlesbrough had. I think that really, Middlesbrough were nowhere near for huge portions of that season. And I tell you what really did for him, guys, was that decision. It was Michael Carrick's decision to bring Kelechi and Nacho in. We had a chance to bring others in, including Adam Armstrong. Not that he did brilliantly at West Brom, but Kelechi and Nacho on huge wages was an absolute disaster. And it's been a lot of years since I've seen the Middlesbrough fan base so united in an opinion of how horrific Kelechi and Nacho was. He's one of the worst players we've seen in the Middlesbrough shirt, and that went a long way. That was Carrick's decision. Understand he did it on the back of a recommendation from Johnny Evans, and it really did play a big part, guys. That was meant to be our big sign in January, and that cost us because he was horrific.
Yeah, some of the less fans that I know talked about him, and they said exactly the same. I think they were relieved when he left the club. So yeah, I can understand your frustrations on that one. But you're telling us there's a chance, though, John Dal Thomason. There could well be another Geordie at the helm.
He's one I'm told is on the list. I don't think he's at the top of it. He did very well when he was at Blackburn, to be fair to him. But Steve Cooper, I think it's the ideal job for him at the moment. I think he's the best candidate out there. Obviously, let's forget the Leicester thing because it was a poison chalice really for him coming from Nottingham Forest. Wasn't really the right job, but let's not forget the job he did at Nottingham Forest. And he took over Forest. I think they might have been bottom when he took over, and he took them to promotion. So everyone forgets the job he did there. He was an exceptional job at Forest. A worse situation than what Middlesbrough are in now, and I think he's got that experience. It's someone who we need. Obviously. There's a few candidates out there. Rob Edwards, I wouldn't think Rob Edwards would have a chance of getting the job, to be honest, given what he's done with Luton. But yeah, I think Steve Cooper is the favourite. We've seen someone like Gary O'Neill linked, but yeah, after his record, Mills fans don't want Gary O'Neill after what he did at the club last time he was there. He got booked. He got booked in a Middlesbrough game, if you don't know, to go and watch the golf. Which didn't go down well with the fan base. So, I think Steve Cooper is the firm favourite, and I would be shocked if it wasn't him. But hey, but they're going to have to do it quickly, guys. The fixtures come out in 2 weeks' time for the Championship, and we haven't even announced who our new kit manufacturers yet. Do believe it will be Castor, one who you guys know well. But we haven't confirmed that yet. Yeah, well, obviously they're moving Umbro to Rangers, and so Castor I think will be our new one, taking over from Aria. But yeah, it doesn't bode well getting the kits for the summer when we don't even know who's making them yet.
If it is Castor, Graeme, get your kit orders in now,
and get a size up for sure, or two.
You might get them in time, but let's wait and see on that one. Just a quick shout out to Russ, one of our sponsors in the chat. Hope you are well. Yes, I may need a radiator from you, so we will get that sponsorship up at some point during the show, and I may well be in touch for us. So hold on to that one. Good man.
We'll play the jingle for you later on, Pete.
Yeah, of course. Just to rejig the memory. But boys, let's get into it. And look, I think it's a fitting way to start, Graeme, because you may have a little bit to expand on this regarding Paul Mitchell. We know we did a show on it last week. If you missed that, people, go check that one out. Really good show, a reactionary show on the news that Paul Mitchell is to leave Newcastle United at the end of this month. However, Graeme, you've talked about this quite a lot as well, and you've put a piece in there. Not only is he leaving Newcastle United, but he's actually emerged as a target for the Saudi Pro League Al Hilal. And so I don't know how you want to expand on this situation with Paul Mitchell, but just share with us your side of things from what you know, mate.
Yeah, obviously, as you guys know, I did let you guys know a bit in advance that Mr. Mitchell might be leaving the club. It emerged a few weeks ago, from what I'm told. Just shows you guys can keep your mouth shut. It's good. It's a good sign. But you guys knew it was coming, so you could pre-prepare. But yeah, it was coming for a few weeks, and to be fair, I think it's a really good thing for Newcastle United. You know, it was not a happy place to be. We've known that Eddie and Paul Mitchell have been at loggerheads since almost the day he arrived. I think we spoke not long after he arrived, and it was those press conference where Eddie launched into a tirade about it, really. And you know, for someone like Eddie to become upset at something, I think that really shows how his annoyance at the situation. He was never happy with it, and I think Mitchell as well came in knowing he wasn't first choice. He knew that Eddie Howe was pushing for Dougie Freedman at the time. It was just a bad look, wasn't it, guys, overall? And yeah, they've had a parting of the ways. Paul Mitchell, I think, will end up elsewhere. He's highly respected abroad, especially. I think it will. We'll get on to the transfers. I think it will have an impact in some ways. But in terms of Newcastle, they've appointed an outside organisation to look. But I think they sort of know who they might like. I think Eddie Howe will be involved, I'm told, in the process at some point. So I think for Newcastle as a club long term, and in terms of keeping Eddie Howe and keeping him happy, I think it's a good thing for the club. I think you need to be harmonious in those key positions. You know, sporting director, manager nowadays, I think it's essential. And it clearly wasn't there. Paul Mitchell, he wasn't getting on with other members of staff. I did a story probably 6 to 8 weeks ago, I think it was. Don't know if you guys saw that, where Paul Mitchell had dispatched Steve Nixon to, I think it was the African Under-16 Championship, which certainly raised a few eyebrows amongst the people I talked to in the game. You know, it's not where you expect to see Steve Nixon at a youth tournament in Africa. Not saying there wasn't any great players there was, but you'd think that Steve Nixon's got bigger fish to fry than that, to be fair. But that was just summed up how it hasn't been a happy ship in some ways. And has that impacted? I've had Newcastle fans asking me, has it impacted the overall transfer situation? I don't think it has necessarily, but you know, it has impacted in terms of, has there been agreement on targets? I don't think necessarily there has, and that hasn't really helped either. We saw the Dubravka situation. Even in January, we saw the Dubravka situation. Mitchell and Howe were completely opposite ends of the scale on that. Mitchell wanted to take the money from Saudi. I think we spoke about that at the time, didn't we? Mitchell wanted to take the money. Eddie Howe didn't. And these things shouldn't be played out in public, guys. Yes, as journalists, we find out things, but you fans already knew about that, and that shouldn't be played out in public. And as I said, for that reason, I think for Piff and Eddie Howe, and maybe the sanity of the fans in some ways, perhaps not for us journalists, especially someone Alec reported on these little splits in hierarchy. It's a bit of fun at times, but I think it's ultimately going to be a very good thing for Newcastle, and let's see where to go with it. There have been some suggestions. Do they appoint internally? You know, did they promote Nixon and Andy Howe, Eddie's nephew? Does he go higher up? I think that's still possible, but I think they will bring someone in to do a role within the club, especially with Darren Eales leaving as well. I think we'll see 2 appointments, especially one in the football and the sporting side, or will come in just to help Eddie, because he couldn't manage that on his own.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how it goes. I think a few people in the chat have said about Andy Howe potentially being moved up position into more of a senior role. It could be, you know, there was links with potentially, and this came from Crystal Palace fans that thought that Dougie Freedman, who's in a job in Saudi with a club that's linked to PIF, that could be potentially sort of sidestepped across to Newcastle. That came from
I don't think that can be ruled out. It's not brain surgery. We already know that Piff and Newcastle like a Dougie Freedman. So, is it possible he comes in maybe as a chief operating officer, maybe as maybe like a Monchi role, president of football operations sort of thing? I certainly wouldn't rule it out, and we know he is someone who'd have liked, and I do know even before he moved to Saudi this time around, there was still interest from Newcastle, I was told. So, wouldn't be a huge shock if he was involved. Does he come next year or something? I don't think it's a huge shock if Dougie Freedman ends up at St James's Park at some point in the not so distant future.
Interesting to keep an eye on that one, lads. That's for sure. But let's talk about players, because Newcastle have been linked with a lot of players in this short period of time. And someone reminded us in the chat. I think it might have been. I don't even know who it was. Someone was in the chat that said it's only been 4 days. There's been a whirlwind since the season finished. It's only been 4 days that the window is actually open. But let's start with, and I'll just work through the list. Let's start with the goalkeeping situation, because I know you've touched on it before.
We're starting with the goalkeeper. We're starting with the goalkeepers, Pete. The least interesting of all the players you can start. Let's go. Let's start in Mbeumo. Let's start in Mbeumo, Pete. Come on, you're avoiding it. Let's start in Mbeumo.
That was next on the list. It was next on the list.
Ahead of the goalkeeper. The goalkeepers is boring. You've got about half a dozen now. You probably signed 2 more. There we go. Let's move on to Mbeumo.
Fine. You're making the nearly 500 people live in the chat now very happy, because they want to get to the good stuff. So we'll move as long.
There's plenty more. There's plenty more where this came from. Don't worry. There's plenty more where this came from.
And you're normally the pantomime villain, Graeme. You live up to your reputation.
Well, I hope all the audience is shouting, "He told you so." Well, that's what we'll get on to.
Well, we could well be now. Look, we know that Bryan Mbeumo is Manchester United bound after he decided that was going to be the move. Reports then started to come out that around why he may be going to Man United, or preferred Man United. And there was talks about wage demands and wanting a lot of money, which, let's face it, Newcastle United don't have the sort of money, wages-wise, to put out for a player like that in terms of what was being reported. I know you wrote a piece on this as well, saying that Newcastle weren't prepared to meet Brentford's demands for Bryan Mbeumo. How does that link to the wages? Is that a correlation in terms of what was meant to happen, or not? What do you know from this situation? Why didn't it happen with Newcastle United?
I think I was discussing off the show to the guys where, the Newcastle PR machine was in full flow with Bryan Mbeumo. I know Manchester United and Mbeumo weren't particularly happy with what's come out. The reports have been flooding out from Newcastle's end, saying, "Oh, we weren't prepared to do this and that." Let's not beat around the bush. The fee for Bryan Mbeumo was over 60 million. Whatever you think of that, if you're going to balk at that, fair enough. But the precedent has been set in the market already. Matheus Cunha has left Wolves to join Manchester United for 62 million. My understanding that Brentford think that Mbeumo is better than Cunha. So there's the base level fee. And I think we'd all agree that I think that's a fair fee personally. I think that's a fair fee for the market. But Newcastle were not willing to go to 60 million. That's it. End of story there. If Newcastle are not willing to go to 60 million, and at that point, Bryan Mbeumo knows this. So Newcastle not making any sort of push for him at all. So if they're not making a push for him, why? And he knows Manchester United are making a push for him. Then of course he's going to come out and say, "I'm going to go to Manchester United," because he knows Newcastle are not making that effort. And let's not beat around the bush. And Mbeumo is Newcastle's number 1 target here on the right. They've known for a lot of months they wanted him. They've known what the fee is. Newcastle thought, my belief is, that we're going to get him for less than 55. But once the Cunha deals happen, that's not going to happen. It's nonsensical in many ways. And then obviously the PR machine has come out saying, "Oh, he wants X, Y, and Z, whatever." That's by the by. Newcastle didn't even get to that point because they were never going to pay his transfer fee. So it wouldn't matter to Newcastle if Mbeumo was asking for 400 grand a week, because you were never at the table for that. You weren't going to pay the fee that Brentford required. And whether you think he's too much at 60, neither here nor there, because I do think it's a fair fee, considering that the precedent has already been set with Cunha. Newcastle have come out, and I think it cries out as spilt milk. They're crying over spilt milk here in Newcastle. It's now we didn't want him anyway because he was demanding this. It's like, do you know what I mean? Just like, the reason he's not at Newcastle is because of Newcastle. It's not because the players demanding X, Y, and Z from Manchester United. That's not the truth here. The truth is Newcastle United would not pay for Bryan Mbeumo. That's why he's not coming to St James's Park. He was up for it. Of course he was. He's not Newcastle. He's Bryan Mbeumo. I think we spoke in. But when was the last time we spoke? February, guys.
Yeah.
We knew then Mbeumo was one of Newcastle's top targets. It's been no even local reporters have confirmed it, and via the club as well. So I think that the fans. I think Newcastle are getting off lightly here. I think the fans need to remember the reason that Bryan Mbeumo is not at Newcastle United is Newcastle United, not Bryan Mbeumo.
Okay,
Yeah.
but boys,
But is it true that he's looking for or going to receive wages of 250,000 a week?
That is accurate. Yeah, but if
Then we are out of the market.
No, that's not the case at all, because there's players have accepted less. If you'd offered this, if you'd gone in there and agreed terms, who'd have said he wouldn't have accepted 200 or even less to go to Newcastle for Champions League football? Who's to say that?
We're not even at 200 though. Our highest paid player isn't at 200.
And we'll get onto that. That's going to be a massive issue for Newcastle going forward, and we'll get onto that, guys, about especially one of your current players. And if Newcastle are a Champions League team, I said a lot of people in football use Daniel Levy as a poster child of the financial world, how to manage a football team, because they don't deliver many trophies, but I tell you what, he delivers on budget every year. There's no Tottenham players on these big wages, and so if you are someone like a Piff, you want to be run more like Tottenham than you do Manchester United. But if you're going to be wanting to sign these best players in Europe, and by the way, Mbeumo, not just his stats for goals, guys, I'm told his analytical points wise, he is one of the best players in Europe analytically. If it really is up there, it's stuff we don't see, and. I just don't think Newcastle made a big enough push for him. Yeah, I say fair enough. It might have outbid him in terms of wages, but I don't think Mbeumo is one of those players who's solely based on. He's an Eddie Howe type player. He's a very down to earth guy, from what I'm told by people who know him well. I think he was attainable for Newcastle. I do. I really believe that. But if they're not willing to, if they don't believe, if Newcastle United don't believe he's worth more than Matheus Cunha, then why should Mbeumo come to Newcastle United?
Chris, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean it's fair enough, and I see what Graeme means about the salary, because I suppose it's all retrospect, isn't it? And for Matheus Cunha can ask for higher wages because he will be saying to Man United, "Well, there's no Champions League. I'm putting my career at risk, essentially." So he can demand those higher wages, and Man United will have to expect to pay it. Whereas at Newcastle, if we were to go for them, it's a different conversation, because we'd obviously talk about our current wage structure. We'd say, well, we've got Champions League football, we're going in the right direction. So there's lots of different things to discuss there. But I mean, I'm disappointed we didn't go for Bryan Mbeumo. We spoke about him very recently on the channel, but ultimately, as Graeme has said, if the money was not put on the table and we weren't willing to deal at 60 million, then I suppose we just have to kind of move on over it, really.
Yeah.
What's the story that, like, let's take this at face value, what Graeme's saying here. What is our story that our top defensive target, Gay, last time we lowballed? I know the figure got crazy in the end. We lowballed to start off with. It's a bit of a pattern there for what we are. We shouldn't be. We should be a bit more realistic, maybe with the figure we initially going with. Okay, everyone wants a good deal, but
I think you're right in that, because there would be a concern of why we're starting so low. I think we covered that in the sub. We actually talked about it.
We did, yeah.
Why did we actually start so low? But then, from a Newcastle United point of view, with PSR and everything else, we have to. And the one thing that I've maybe took away from this Bryan Mbeumo situation because we all wanted him. He was our first choice. We really wanted him because we've seen his output this season. Everyone, even opposition fans and clubs, were saying he's perfect for Newcastle United. So it almost excited us to that point. No, I'm not. But you get to that point where it doesn't happen, and then for me, I'm looking at it and thinking, well, we need a squad this season. We need a squad going into next season, and we need multiple players in multiple positions. And so Newcastle, I could be wrong here, but I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking Newcastle maybe looking at that situation, and can we spend 60 plus million on one signing when we need multiple? And that's the thing that I've taken away from it. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But that's the thing that I think is to why they aren't going in and just going, right, here's 60 million, getting it done and getting out of there, and maybe looking at a cheaper alternative that Eddie Howe can do the best out of. It might not be what we want, but it might be the best in terms of overall looking at the end of the summer and having potentially 4 or 5 signings where you're going, actually, this squad looks pretty strong on paper now to really attack this season. And that's the one thing that maybe I've took away from it. I could be wrong, but that was it. The second thing as well is that do we want to be in a situation where I'm not saying Bryan Mbeumo is not worth 60 million or Cunha. I think they're close to that valuation. But you see Man United have overpaid. Rasmus Højlund, for example, had to overpay for Xerxes over his release clause just to get the deal done because of staggered payments. And the amount of they've overpaid. And Man City, Kusanov. We were talking about Kusanov in January, looking at 20-25 million. When Man City become interested, all of a sudden, it's like nearly double that or close to double that. Do we want to be in that position where we're just overpaying or they see Newcastle United's name? Remember that 1st January of our window? Everyone was just blowing those prices up because it's
the Newcastle tax.
Exactly.
I don't think that's comparable, Pete. I think it's in Mbeumo's situation. Let's take this in Mbeumo. You know what it's needed to get the deal done. I don't think anyone. Whilst if you're paying 62 for Mbeumo, if he goes for 62, same as Cunha, whilst slightly on the high side, I don't think any Newcastle fan think that's wildly over the top. Don't think anyone would think that. He's been one of the Premier League's best players, and this isn't a Newcastle tax. That's his market value. The market value has been set now. Manchester United, whether you like it or not, they set the precedent for Cunha. So Newcastle and Newcastle, when they were looking at him, they weren't looking at him at 40 million anyway. They knew he was going to cost well over 50. So
I wasn't saying it with regards to Mbeumo, by the way. Like I said, him and Cunha, I do think they are close to their value. But Daz made the point about Mark Gay, and I think we would have massively overpaid had we ended up paying that 70 million or whatever in the summer. And I think that's where
I don't think it's to do with finances. I do genuinely think that there's people at Newcastle who don't think Mbeumo was worth going over that 60 for. It's as simple as that.
Then obviously before we even got the window open, they must have ruled him out though. Even though us as fans had continued to talk and talk.
No. Up until a few weeks ago, he was still the top target, and they thought they were going to get him.
Okay.
What's changed then, Graeme? What's changed? Because if he was the top target, as you say, and they knew that ballpark, he was talking 55, 60 maybe. What do you think all of a sudden's changed where they've gone? No, is it because there's another target in place? Is it because they're thinking better value, as Pete mentioned earlier, in terms of having to spread this money down? Is it like we could get him in for 40, slightly less, but less caliber of a player, but it means we can then spend more on the centre-back or the goalie or somewhere else on the pitch?
Maybe, if it's, you're going to spend more on wages for players, so we'll get on to that in a moment. But only Newcastle will be able to tell us. Up until less than 2 weeks ago, he was still their top target. I was convinced he was going to Newcastle. I must admit, up until a few weeks ago, and speaking to people around it in Brentford, Newcastle. Even when Manchester United first came in there, I still thought he was going to end up at Newcastle.
Okay, so let's park that Mbeumo talk for a second. Because
you can pack it permanently if you want, Pete. Because
But you know what? I am. I'm deleting that pic that I put on. It's gone. And Mbeumo will not.
Pete's cancelling that Mbeumo shirt. He's cancelling on the site as we speak. He's Mbeumo shirt is getting cancelled.
Thank you for that.
For Dubravka one.
However, there are other right-wing targets that Newcastle United can potentially pursue, and one or two that you've talked about, Graeme. One of which we've talked about previously, and a few people have reported on it. So Sebastian Riedel reported on Newcastle eyeing Mohamed Kudus as a potential option. We had this the other day when we looked at the Football Insider talking about it, and also yourself, Graeme, talked about Mohamed Kudus as a potential option, albeit you think you mentioned in your piece around sort of Man United and Arsenal potentially looking at him, but Newcastle have been linked with him as well. You also talked about another player that we'll come on to in just a second, but Mohamed Kudus, is there a possibility? We know he's got a release clause. There were noises that he did want to leave and that West Ham could be negotiated down. Is any of that true?
Yeah, so there's good and bad news on Kudus here. Let me sum up for you. West Ham need to sell to rework their squad for Graham Potter. Kudus is their most sellable asset. He's not the only one who'll go. Thomas Suchek will go. Lucas Paqueta will go this summer. Them three will definitely go, perhaps more. Jared Bowen is the only West Ham player not for sale. Let's get that right. He's the only West Ham player not for sale. Mohamed Kudus, he does have a release clause, as you guys have said. It won't need to be met. West Ham were hoping he would go to Saudi Arabia, who were willing to go like to the 70s. They weren't going to go to 84, I think his release clause is. They weren't going to go there, but they were hoping that. Mohamed Kudus, in the last few weeks, has made it clear he does not want to go to Saudi Arabia. At Intrinsity, story I did today. He's a player of major interest to an awful lot of clubs. He's got such a high ceiling, this player. As you know, guys, you've seen him. He's had a bad season at West Ham, but West Ham are utterly dreadful, and I think they're destined for the drop next season if they keep with Graham Potter. That aside, there are a lot of Premier League clubs interested. I do know 2 or 3 Premier League clubs are interested. There was talk recently of swap deals. Manchester United had a conversation with them about Jadon Sancho swap deal. Chelsea have had a conversation about swapping Sanchez and Dewsbury Hall. So we know that there's a little bit of an interest there from Chelsea and Manchester United. Arsenal have been linked. Liverpool have been linked. And part of the reason Kudus has said no to Saudi is because he knows his Premier League interest. As of a couple of days ago, guys, I did ask about Newcastle. I was told they are not in the mix for Mohamed Kudus.
Right. Okay.
I don't know why, but it's one of those. I think they've got other targets in terms of Kudus. Did they come back in for him? I don't see it at this point. But as I said, I asked the question from people who were working on these deals. They think the deal will get done for him sooner rather than later. I did ask specifically about Newcastle and was told they are not currently in the picture.
Okay, so that clears that up then. From your perspective, Newcastle not necessarily at the table with him. However, there are others that we have been linked with, and it was one that I put on the screen a second ago, and a player that a lot of Newcastle fans have watched and have been really excited by, and it's this man here, Alakouche from Monaco, right winger, had a very sort of impressive season at Monaco. Has been linked. Get French Football have reported it. Graeme, you've reported it as well. And
I think I broke that one, Pete. But fairness,
well, you did, because actually I went
a long time ago.
A while
ago. We
quite a while
long
ago.
Time ago. We did. He's a fabulous player. He really is. We said that at the time, and I imagine Pete's gone and signed him on FIFA a number of times, having watched him. He's one of your favourite players now, Pete, I imagine. We'll probably talk about Bonifacio later in the show, one of Pete's man crushes.
Don't get excited, Graeme. Come on, don't do it.
Well, I wouldn't be if you are going for him. I won't get excited because it'll mean someone else is going. But in terms of, I personally think this is where we'll see some changes in the transfer situation. I think some of these more foreign based deals with Mitchell leaving, I'm not so sure. Don't get me wrong. I think he's the sort of player. Even if Eddie and the other scouts watched him, he's a fabulous talent. He really is. I think it's less likely now.
Okay. They're very much a Paul Mitchell deal then. Could it not be potential a goodbye? Because he's still
he's still a fabulous player. He's a wonderful footballer, no doubt about that. I just haven't heard his name in the last few weeks, to be honest.
Okay.
Could I throw one at you, so Graeme? Just left field.
Yeah.
And I know, Pete, I might be going off track here, but Antonio Semedo from Bournemouth, and I know Bournemouth are being raided at the moment, left, right, and centre. But right winger tracks back. Bournemouth connection.
Tracks back, does he? You don't watch Bournemouth much, do you?
I've seen him tracking back.
Antoine Semenyo, I think that's who Daz was trying to get over. But there's two players at Bournemouth. Let's talk. We can talk Marcus Tavernier as well, who has emerged as a target, as a Kudos replacement. Actually, Antoine Semenyo, very good player. I haven't heard Newcastle for him too much recently, and he's got a very large price tag. He's costing more than Mbeumo if you want him, so I don't see that massively. Now, Marcus Tavernier is a fascinating name. I think he's one to keep an eye on. He is probably what you'd like to call a plastic Geordie. Whilst at Middlesbrough, he lived in Newcastle. He's got a lot of Newcastle friends. He loves the city. If you look back at there's comments from Marcus about his time in Teesside. He lived in Newcastle through his brother, obviously being at Newcastle at the time, and he grew up there. Really, keep an eye on Marcus Tavernier. He could be an interesting option. West Ham are looking at him. Is he ready to move on? Possibly. He's a fabulous footballer. He really is, guys. I think he's an Eddie Howe type player. So I said there's nothing in it at the moment, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him emerge from the pack as a possible option. He's a very, very good player who can play all over as well.
Graeme, what would you say to them fans hearing that about Marcus Tavernier and going not really excited by that, not really the right winger that we would expect coming to Newcastle United? What would you say to those fans that maybe are thinking that now you've mentioned him?
I think the ceiling is massively high for Marcus Tavernier. He's a huge, huge talent. And I'd say watch him. I'd say he's obviously, when you see him in action play live, he's a spectacular player. Who it is, and it's one of those. As you said, you buying slightly lower than expectation wise, possibly. But I say he's got a huge ceiling. Do you trust Eddie Howe? I think with Newcastle, you were hoping to buy for this right hand side role, especially, despite the season that Jacob Murphy had, because he was spectacular. I do get that feeling you wanted a ready-made product, and we'll talk about a few more as well. There's other players out there as well, like the Jonathan Rose of this world. I'm sure we'll come on to, and let's not forget Sindri Vallegeli, the brilliant Norwegian who's at Nordisland. So some very, very good young players out there, but I think it'd be
Jonathan Rowe, because he was the one that was going to come to you next. You've mentioned it before. He was on loan. He's from Norwich, on loan, he was last season at Marseille. Newcastle have been linked with him a little bit, and you've talked about him quite a bit. So, what's the situation there?
Yeah, he's on loan. That was just part of because he had other deals to do. So it was an obligation. So it wasn't really a loan. But he had a very good season in south of France. Marseille were brilliant last season. And Jonathan Rowe, a player who I love massively. When he was at Norwich, guys, I think I mentioned him to you guys when he was at Norwich. Spectacular player. Could he follow the path of a real Fox, a Norwich legend, coming up to Newcastle? Not dissimilar type of player. He's a massive talent. I love Jonathan Rowe. And another one who I think would be a very Eddie Howe type signing. I think Jonathan Rowe is a real possibility. But again, do they have a bigger fish to fry in terms of this right side role? Possibly, but I think Jonathan Rowe is someone very much on the radar for Newcastle. Where, he would. Again, he's not going to be in the 50-60 range, is he? It's going to be less than definitely less than 40, probably maybe less than 30.
Can I throw a name at you, Graeme? And this is something. Well, it was my brother actually. He sent me an image, and I'll explain what that image is shortly. To do with the odds on this player and where his next club will be. And I put it to the boys before. Now, people in the chat will go mad when I say this name, and they'll go, "No, don't want him, no."
I think I've got the image. I'm not caught with the chat, by the way. So
you're not.
I think I'm caught. It's who I've got on this image.
Oh, really?
Wait, carry on.
Oh, go on. Okay. I'll know by your face now, Pete. But well, tell you what, I'm just going to say it. Jadon Sancho. Now, before everyone goes mental, before everyone goes mad, I know
300k.
He's not. Yeah. Crazy wages. But Chelsea have activated the clause to send him back to Man United for $5 million. Man United are desperate to get rid of him. Let's not forget, this is Jadon Sancho, who we've seen play incredibly well at Dortmund. We know there's a player in there. And look at the fee for Jadon Sancho now, you could argue, is 20 million. It could be as little as 20 million for the 25-year-old just turned in March. And what are your thoughts?
It won't be 20 million. But I think we can throw another in this category. In this category, we can throw another player, Jack Grealish, in here. So
yeah. He was on
and there is Jack Grealish. There has been some interest there. So Jadon Sancho first. I think Chris is right to bring him up. He's a right winger who's on the market. Chelsea did want to keep him. The deal was 30 million to do, and it was a great deal. That's why Chelsea were pursuing it. Jadon Sancho is on around £325,000 a week. Chelsea were asking him to basically halve his wages to come to Stamford Bridge. He was not willing to do that. He was offered to West Ham as part of the deal for Kudos, by the way. And the Man United were willing to do something there in terms of exchange, but that clearly isn't going to happen when it comes to Newcastle. I haven't heard of any Newcastle interest in Jadon Sancho, I'll be honest. I don't think it's a bad shout from Chris. I don't think he's an Eddie Howe type player in terms of what I hear about the player. I don't think he would fit for what Eddie Howe would want, personally. He's a brilliant player, and I think he would be a good fit for what Newcastle want. But as you said, the finances on it are just mind-boggling, really. Man United have got a problem with him. They really have more. And do you know what? More so than Anthony and Marcus Rashford. I think they've got a problem with Jadon Sancho. I think he'll end up back at Dortmund, to be honest, guys. Although good fit, I don't see it. Jack Grealish, very similar. Well, actually not. Jack Grealish is a little bit different. Intrinsically, the player doesn't want to leave Man City. He's very happy where he is. He's willing to fight for his place. And I think Jack Grealish actually has shown tremendous attitude. And I think a lot of people think, he's not going to be an Eddie Howe type player. He's not. But Jack Grealish is a brilliant trainer. He's got a brilliant attitude. And he's not. I was going to say he's not a party animal. Yeah, he does like to live a life at times.
Same Jack Grealish.
Sorry,
originally Ireland, now plays for England. That's Jack Grealish, yeah.
England national Jack Grealish, yeah. Let's not condemn him for making the right choice about international football. That's come on. He's a very good player. I think he would fit in with him, but guys, he's the highest paid England national in the Premier League. When we talk about Jadon Sancho wages, Jack Grealish is on more, and they're going up and up. Wow. He is on mega money. I believe he is only second to Erling Haaland in Manchester City wages once De Bruyne is gone. That's how big a wages we're talking. We are talking, guys. Even if Alexander Isak gets the contract he wants, it won't be as much as what Jack Grealish is on now. That's sum it up like that.
No wonder he's happy at City game.
Yeah, exactly. He is potentially available. The one thing with Grealish, and he is happy there. But obviously, he wants to be playing more, but he is content there.
He'll be content financially, but
he's not. He's not kicking up. He's not kicking up a foot.
Barely kicking the ball.
Yeah, but he's not unhappy at the club though. He's not unhappy at the club. He loves the club, and he might be available on loan. Again, that might be an option, but do Newcastle want to be going down the loan route for players? I'm not entirely sure they will. But if it means getting, what was it, Jadon Sancho becomes available, him or Grealish, it's possible, I guess. And we saw Villa being hugely successful with loan players, didn't we? So let's not rule that out. But I think both of those are highly unlikely as we sit here now. But stranger things have happened.
Yeah, I don't see Newcastle going for a loan. Eddie Howe is it's been documented before that he doesn't like loan deals. The only loan that he's had was Lewis Hall, and that was with an obligation to actually buy them.
I just think in this current market, Pete, with these new type of contracts we're seeing for players, we're in a slightly different world now, though, from probably when Eddie Howe said that, and sometimes the chance to get a Sancho or a Grealish I think they would consider it. I do, but it's not likely.
I think the club would consider it, but I just don't like. It's been talked about so many times that Eddie Howe doesn't like. I think they referred to it in a couple of pieces. He doesn't like developing players that are not going to be long term.
Yeah, but I think it's more for the youth development. Like, you're not going to take a young player on loan from Chelsea, develop him like Hall and whatever. But I think, does this give you a chance to sign a Jonathan Rowe or a Valia Gali and then bring in someone on loan as well? I think it creates a few options there. PSR wise, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah. With Sancho and Grealish. Daz, anything on those two before we move on?
I'm with you, Pete, in that one. I can't see Eddie's sanctioning loan deals, and Eddie is at the wheel here, so I can't see it happening. Okay, maybe another name I'm going to throw at you, because I saw the chat I mentioned as well. The name we've mentioned for Tyler Dibling, who could potentially be on the move, but the fee involved could be tricky as well.
Well, he's a number 10 though, intrinsically. As I said, since January, he's been virtually Tottenham bound since January. Has that changed? Not from what I understand. I think the player wants to go to Tottenham. I think there's talk about 100 and it's dropping 50 all the time. I think he'll end up at Spurs for less than 40 million this summer.
We take that. But
he's not coming to Newcastle.
While we're on right wingers, and sorry if I'm jumping ahead here, Pete, but what about Barcola? Now that link came out a couple of days ago, and some people will say just won the Champions League, Barcola, big part. Okay, not a guaranteed starter, but played a big part throughout the Champions League season. Is that beyond the realms? Would you say, Graeme?
Yeah. If you're not playing for Bryan Mbeumo, you're not playing for Bradley Barcola.
Yeah,
and I tell you what, Bradley Barcola is a lot more expensive than Bryan Mbeumo is. A lot more. But to get Bradley Barcola, PSG, he's not even for sale. I don't think you get much change out of 80 million. Is that good? No, very little. And it's not to do with Newcastle. I don't think anyone would get him, to be fair.
Yeah. I spoke to my brother about that because he was at the PSG celebrations for the Champions League. And he did say that Barcola, isn't really getting in as much as he would like because of Doué being playing so well, Dembele, Kvaratskhelia. But he was like, it would take big money. And he actually sent me a link not long after that with Arsenal apparently linked with him. And also were linked with €100 million kind of, which is the figure that I think Graham's sort of touching on. So although the dream was there for a second, it faded very quickly with him. But another player that we know very, very well, his contract runs out in just about 6 months' time, Rooney Badaji. He apparently isn't going to be put into the squad, the Copenhagen squad for the season. For some reason, there's rumours that he is almost kind of being frozen out because of his impending exit, but due to the fact that he's not signing a new contract. 6 months left on his deal. Is there a possibility that someone picks him up for a cheap fee between now and June?
Yeah, I think there's a good chance he moves. A lot of Premier League interest in him. Obviously, that injury has dented his prospects a little bit. He's a sensational talent. I see personally from what I'm hearing, I think he'll end up in Germany.
Okay.
I think he probably will go this summer. He'll definitely sign a pre-contract, as we know, because obviously in Denmark the seasons are different, same as Norway. I expect at the very least by the end of August we'll know where he's going if he hasn't gone permanent. And I don't think it'll be England at this point.
Interesting. Look, there'll be other names that will crop up as we go along, so we'll flash some of those things up. But let's go to strikers then for Newcastle United. We've covered wingers. Let's go to some strikers, and the one that's being talked about the most in terms of coming to Newcastle United, certainly in the media, Sky have been reporting on it, is this man João Pedro. Talked about the fact that he wants to leave Brighton. And kind of pursue other challenges elsewhere. Sky did mention that wherever he goes, he would potentially like to be first choice, but Newcastle have shown an interest. Lots of reporters have been reporting on the fact that João Pedro is of interest for Newcastle United and is wanted by Newcastle United. How do you see that one potentially playing out? Do you think Newcastle will put the money down to try and get him in now that the Mbeumo deal is falling flat because he can play out wide as well as an alternative striker?
As it stands, Brighton don't want to let him go. Obviously, he had a fallout at the end of last season with Van Hecker, a training ground incident. Pedro was deemed to be at fault. And for all intents and purposes, he spat his dummy out a bit, and his people are putting it out there that he's available. And they really want to move him this summer. I don't think they'll get him out. If I'm being brutally honest, Brighton don't need the money, as we know, guys. It's very hard to get players out of Brighton. You have to pay a lot of money to get a player out of Brighton unless he's got a release clause, which João Pedro, I'm told, doesn't have one. He's a player who Newcastle have known for a long time, as we know. We'll touch on others as well. But João Pedro is a player, Newcastle wanted him at Watford. They're ahead of the curve in a lot of ways at the time. Haven't got him. He's a spectacularly good player. I love him an awful lot. I don't see any way, shape or form that Newcastle bring someone like him in to back up Isak. I think it's unrealistic, personally. I think if we're talking in terms of tight budget, I don't believe at all that Newcastle are thinking about changing their formation in the slightest. I think that would be, Newcastle don't lack goals particularly. They lack a bit of creativity, as we've talked about and probably will talk about again. But I don't think that's solved by putting another striker in there. I think it's solved by putting number 10 in the system or having that availability anyway. And João Pedro doesn't give you that. But, I think João Pedro is an interesting one. I think if Isak left, João Pedro would be towards the top of the list.
He's not leaving.
Well, we'll discuss that later. We'll discuss that, Des. I think
we're going to give him that contract, Graeme.
That's the problem. And let's talk about Isak. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. And I think, guys, that the Mbeumo situation tells us two things. One of two things. Does it tell us that Newcastle are not willing to smash their wage structure, so that's a worry when it comes to Isak, or does it tell us that they're saving the money to give Isak that contract? Now, I'm told Newcastle are willing to break their wage structure. To what extent is not known. I think they'll go to 200 for Isak. Will they go to 250 as they will need to? I'm not entirely convinced they'll go to 250.
Meet in the middle?
Why should Isak do that?
Well,
he's the world's best striker. Let's do a poll now. How many Newcastle fans think he's the best striker in the world? I imagine 90% of you. And if that's the case, you got to pay him as such. And this situation, as much as you can say whatever, player power is real. And if Isak rejects a new contract at Newcastle this summer, if he rejects that contract, this isn't over, guys. Liverpool are keeping very close eye on the situation. They really, really are. And they have the funds to do it. And I'm not frightened of Newcastle fans at all, because I think Newcastle, as I said to you on the show previously, they should have done this last summer. They should have got Isak tied up last summer. I think this has been all of Newcastle's making. And it didn't need to be. Isaac sat back, his people sat back. Okay, You want to do Anthony Gordon new deal? Fair enough. You can't do us now. Fair enough. But Newcastle invited this situation on. They could have had Isak tied up last summer on a lot less than what he's demanding now, and what he's worth as well. He is one of the best strikers in the world, and if you think you can get him on the cheap, he's not going to sign that contract. And I think that this hasn't played out yet, guys. We're in June. There's 2 months left of this window. There's a lot more things to pass here. And Newcastle simply qualifying for the Champions League does not mean that Alexander Isak is staying at the football club. They want him to stay. Of course they do. Does he want to stay? Yes. But he's already... Let's think about this. He's already seen a year... And he was on less money than Callum Wilson. He's already seen a year that thing go past. So he'll want some recompense for that as well. That year that he's missed out on. This situation isn't done and just... It's not as simple as saying, oh, he's under contract till whenever. That's not... We know that's not how modern day football works, guys. We know that.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to put the frighteners on people. I think Newcastle should get this done. That should be the... Let's stop
It'll get done.
We shouldn't be talking... We shouldn't... I know there's people in football not as confident as you, Daz, but I hope you're right. And I hope for Newcastle's sake they do it. But we shouldn't be talking about Mbeumo now. We should be talking about Alexander Isak's new contract.
I think it's a fair point. I think most Newcastle United fans will know that this was always going to be a topic of conversation at some point. Everyone knew, even back last year when it came out that there were no proper talks for him kind of signing a new contract. They knew this was going to come about this summer. I think the big thing this summer is, does he sign a new contract? And if he does, is there a release clause? Because if there is a release clause, we're going to be back to square one in having this same conversation in 26 or 27.
I don't think it will. No, I don't think it will be. If a £250,000 footballer signs a new contract, that's a huge release clause. That's not a release clause that can probably be met by any Premier League club. If a £250,000 a week footballer signs a release clause, like a Haaland, etc., the release clause is negated a little bit. That's not the problem. Newcastle need him to sign this new contract. They really do. To stop any conversation, that's what they need to do. The release clauses will become like it's in Spain. It'll become a natural part of the game and Haaland's got release clauses, and he's had it ever since he was in Norway. He has it in there because it's a two-way situation where if he's ever unhappy sort of thing, but it's in there to protect both sides of the situation. It sets a limit, and I don't think that's an issue, the release clause. I don't. I think. But I'm going to be curious to see. Will Alexander Isak accept 200? I don't think he will. Will Newcastle go to 250? For your fans' sake, I hope they do. I think they should. I think he is worth that, and I think he does justify that. And when we're seeing, as we just been discussing, when we're discussing the fact that Jadon Sancho's on more than 300, that's by the by. Marcus Rashford on so much more. I don't think it's unreasonable. But Newcastle, the problem, the other issue, the flip side of that coin, what Newcastle are looking at as well, guys. Okay, let's give Isak 250 grand a week. Then you get the 4 or 5 knocks on the door from Tonali, Bruno, Botman, Gordon. Right, where's our money? And because that will happen, guys. And any new sign that comes in thereafter, they're going to want big money, and that is the danger with this. And look what's happened in Man United. You end up with 3 players like Rashford, Anthony, and Sancho on 300 grand a week. It's a slippery slope sometimes, isn't it? And to be fair to Newcastle and the higher ups, that's what they've got to think about. It's a dangerous situation. It's what Liverpool are having.
That's the way we have to go.
Yeah.
We have to go, and the club has to progress, and they have to. They're mixing them with the big boys, so they're going to have to follow suit.
And it's a great point you make, Daz, because it's where Tottenham haven't gone, and is that why Tottenham haven't progressed? Probably yes.
There could be a scenario where they are waiting for Callum Wilson to leave to use some of those wages. He's on over 100 grand a week. You said he was on more than Alexander Isak. Could they be using some of his wages when he leaves the club to supplement Alexander Isak potentially to get him to that 250? That can't be put out of the question either.
I don't think a month's worth of Callum Wilson money comes into conversation personally, but
no, what I mean is because he's no longer contracted to the
Yeah,
club.
but
Available.
because a new contract wouldn't necessarily doesn't have to begin until July 1st, but technically,
it could actually be done as well,
really.
behind the scenes, and just it hasn't been announced. There could be something in place.
No,
Well, Dan Burns signed a new
that's not true.
contract.
That's not true.
Longstaff extended his contract, and neither of those were announced. So, but yeah.
Well, I'm sure the amount of journals ringing up about Longstaff and Burn was as many as are ringing up about Isak. I'm sure that's true as well.
Does it mean that it didn't happen though? Does it mean that it didn't happen?
Oh yeah, well, I hope on July 1st that is the case. And I said I really hope, and I genuinely mean this. I hope for the Premier League's sake, actually, that Isak does do that. Like, do we particularly want to see? I know the answer. It's a rhetorical question for you guys. Do we want to see Isak at Liverpool? Of course we don't. And the Premier League as a whole, I don't think we do particularly. But it's an intriguing situation. The people who look after Newcastle's coffers it's a fascinating subject. And I know the fans will say, yeah, let's just bang Isak in at 250, and yeah, if Bruno wants 200, we'll do that, this and that. It just turns up that, not the floodgates, but you're taking the club onto a completely different level there, and but obviously with Piff coming in, that's what you hope is the point. And I've said this to you before on previous shows, like Piff aren't in here just to finish fifth every season, finish top 5. That's not what you're here for. You're here to win the Premier League, and if you are going to win the Premier League, you do need world-class players. And to keep world-class players, you need to pay them as such. So I think they do need to set the market here. I do think they need to say to Isak, right, what do you want? There's the contract. I think you do need to do that.
At some point, we have to go up.
You do.
We have Bruno was the benchmark when we gave him the new deal. I think Isak has to be the benchmark for the next phase for Newcastle United. We are going to eventually.
Well, it's a different level. They take paying a player over £200,000 a week. It does take it to that next level. It really does.
Like you said,
it'll be the first time in Newcastle's history, but they need to do it. Yeah, they can't. Yeah, that's what I mean. I think that if it gets into July and it's not signed, we'll see. We're going to hear a lot more about this, and I hope it is an early deal and it's done. Newcastle are working. It is something that's ongoing, and we'll see. I don't think Isak is desperate to get away, but I think he's aware of his options. That's for sure.
We'll just pause it for a second because there's over 700 in the chat, and I know Sophie and the rest are telling everybody, if you're new to the chat, if you just come in, make sure you click that like. Let's get us right up there into the hundreds of likes at the moment. I think we're around, or might be around 200, or maybe just over that. Let's get us to 300, 400, 700 in the chat. Thank you for tuning in and watching the show. Great discussions. We never hold back when Graham's on the show, and this all makes for a good discussion. But
I just hope I'm bringing that non-Newcastle PR exercise. So yeah. I hope I'm bringing that forward, and as I've always said to you guys, I think that I think Newcastle should be reaching for the moon and the stars. I do. I think that's what Piff here for. I don't. At the moment you're doing nothing that Bobby Robson didn't do. Like, you got to think bigger than that, and we've got to think as a club. They've got to think. Yeah, it's so important to keep Isak. It's so yes, he's replaceable. Every player in the world football is replaceable, of course he is. But I just think the signal, by not giving him that new contract, presuming he wants to sign it, and let's presume he does at this point. They have to do it. They have to give him what he wants. Obviously, if he's asking for 400, that's nonsensical. But if I don't think he turned down 250, I don't. So let's see where we go. But I do think that has to be done this summer. It has to be done.
Okay. No, I like that comment on the screen there, but no, it's great to bounce things off you and ideas off you as well, Graeme. You may come across the names with some or someone's wife, but no, it is good to get your opinion on things. And again,
we could sing the PR exercise, couldn't we? Oh yeah, Newcastle were willing to do Bryan Mbeumo. It's because there's substantial wages, blah blah blah. Yeah, if they want to read out Newcastle press releases all night, we could do that, but we're not doing that, we guys.
The thing about it is, and the reason why we enjoy talking to you, Graeme, is that, you know, what's the point of just kind of agreeing with everything? What's the point of just telling everybody everything you want to hear? Like sometimes, like we go back and forth because we have a difference of opinion, and I like the fact that we do.
But I think Chris was making a good point before the pod where, and I raised this when the Newcastle PR machine, and it's working brilliantly because all the Newcastle fans now think Bryan Mbeumo is a greedy ex whatever, and we don't want him anyway. That's brilliant. Well done, Newcastle. Yeah, Newcastle fans are not gutted you've lost him. You think he's a greedy so and so, and we don't want him anyway. Well, so it's worked perfectly.
Let's wait and see what happens next. But there's other alternatives. So we're looking at players to play with Isak. And you've talked about a couple of players in there, one of which is this man, Tammy Abraham. Now, just finished his loan spell at AC Milan, returning to AS Roma. And you've touched on this and said that Tammy Abraham wants to move back to the Premier League. Intermediaries have offered him to a host of clubs, including Man United. Tammy Abraham has also been linked with Newcastle United as well. What can you tell us about this one?
You know, I think Tammy Abraham is a very interesting option for a lot of clubs. You know, Everton, Man United, obviously they're going through their struggles in terms of striker. And I think if you do keep Isak, the situation is very similar to what Tottenham used to have for many years, trying to find that backup to your main striker. I remember for years and years they could never find that option, could they, behind Kane? And I think someone like Tammy Abraham, I see him fitting in really, really well at Newcastle. I think he's 27, England national. He's a good professional. I think he's very similar, like to Isak in terms of the way he plays. So yeah, I think he'd be a fascinating option, guys. I think there's a lot of Premier League clubs have been for him. But a lot of them are interested in him. He's still got a lot of football to play. Decent injury record of late. He's just come off a season with Milan. Obviously, he was playing backup there because they've just signed Santi Jimenez, so he was always going to be playing backup. So, it's a really interesting option, I think, for Newcastle. For a lot of Premier League teams.
Interesting, Tammy Abraham, lads. What do you think?
We've always been linked to Tammy Abraham back in the Rafa days. Look, I haven't seen him at Milan now. The last time I saw him, he was at Roma. Look, if a decent price could be agreed as a backup, yeah, why not? He wouldn't jump off the page for me, but I haven't seen him play recently.
Chris?
Yeah, no, I think it would be an interesting option. Obviously, a few years ago, he was quite covetous, wasn't he? You know, there was talks of 50, 60, 70 million, and now that price has significantly dropped. He's still a pretty decent age. What is he, 26, 27?
27, yeah, so he's still got a lot of years left in him.
Yeah, and, he's played football at the top level for quite some time. And, if you can bring in a player like Tammy Abraham, who's got that experience, Premier League experience, you're looking for somebody, as you mentioned earlier, Graeme, somebody who's going to be that understudy for the main guy. He's a bloody good option.
Well, we'll wait and see. I think one thing I'll say is that we are going to need someone that's going to be happy to play second fiddle to Alexander Isak, and I think it's going to have to be someone like that's played that second fiddle role. As you mentioned, Graeme, he was playing second fiddle to Jimenez at AC Milan. He's played that role before. He's going to be playing Champions League football again, potentially. Well, if he came to Newcastle United, he definitely would. So an interesting option there. Certainly a player that wouldn't... Would you say he would command a huge fee? What fee do you think, Graeme?
I think less than 30, which people, but that's so nowadays that's a real top championship strikers 30 million now, isn't it? So,
well, I think Liam Delap's just been
Liam Delap, obviously, but yeah, there's options out there for Newcastle. Obviously, on the other side of the room, away from Isak's contract, is the other elephant in the room. Obviously, Mr. Calvert-Lewin. And Guys, I think you might end up getting. I think that Calvert-Lewin does remain an option for Newcastle, but I don't think he would be. I think there's an option where is there a world that Newcastle bring back Wilson and sign Calvert-Lewin? I don't think that's
not one I want to live in.
well. Eddie trusts certain players. And I don't think Callum Wilson coming back is beyond the realms of fantasy, and they have had talks about that. And then you're allowed to bring a Calvert-Lewin in on a sort of prove yourself deal. I don't think that's beyond the realms of fantasy either. And as you say, and what you got to think about, guys, if they do hand Isak this £250,000 a week contract or more, whatever it is, then you might have to cut your cloth in other parts of the squad.
Another option. Another player that you spoke about before is Callum Mbeumo at Rennes. So I think you maybe touched on this a couple of years ago when he was linked with both Leeds and Newcastle before. But you've mentioned and you wrote another piece saying that we have been watching him very, very closely. He had a good season in Ligue 1, over 20 goal contributions for them. He's a Paris Saint-Germain product from their academy. Well thought after. Is there a potential that he leaves Rennes to come to Newcastle this summer?
It's a good chance he leaves. He's in top 4 in Liga in this season. I said Leeds need a striker as well. He was very good for them. So he's very good for Rennes, and Leeds almost signed him before Rennes snuck in, didn't they, to get him from under Leeds' noses previously. He's a good player. He's an option. I said one of the many options Newcastle are aware of. It's Newcastle intrinsically are working for this backup, as you're saying, Pete, and it's not an easy one to recruit sometimes. But yeah, he's a good player. Again, wouldn't be astronomical price, I don't think.
Okay. What about players potentially leaving Newcastle United? So Leeds Live were reporting about the Newcastle pair. We've talked about Callum Wilson before, but Sean Longstaff being linked with a potential move to Leeds United, newly promoted, 27 years old, clearly sixth choice at Newcastle United at this moment in time. Most think that he's going to leave this summer. Do you see that move happening, or do you see Longstaff moving at all? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Longstaff is a good chance he moves. I'm not sure to Leeds. Like people keep linking Leeds with midfielders, but if you actually see Leeds, they've got some wonderful midfield talent. The boy to watch there, guys. What you probably wouldn't have seen the Championship too much. The boy Tanaka, who Leeds have got. My word, what a sensational footballer he is! Wait till you watch him next year. He is absolutely brilliant. You'll be wanting him. Peter's like you, Tanaka. You will want him after seeing him in a handful of games to Leeds next season. He's one of those players who he'll be better in the Premier League with a bit more time. But he was fabulous for Leeds last season. He's a wonderful footballer. But I do think Longstaff will probably go. Obviously, David Moyes is a fan of him at Everton, although he's not really in charge of recruitment at Everton at the moment. But yeah, I do think we will see Longstaff go. I know, Miley's being linked possibly with a loan. I don't see that happening, but I think Longstaff, the time is now. I think he needs to move on, and I think he probably will. The other one, I think Joe Willock's a possibility, but I don't see them both going. So I think it'd be one of those two go in that department.
More likely to go out of the two of them.
Well, I think in a lot of ways maybe Willock, because you get more for him.
More suitors, probably.
Yeah, exactly. Like I've heard Fulham. I've heard a few places for attacking midfield like Willock. So I think Willock would probably have more suitors in the market, but again, and they would bring more money in. So I think there's a real, I think one of those two will go. But I don't think I say you're in Europe now as well, so you can't just have a threadbare squad. So, and obviously, let's talk on goalkeepers, which you've got a mega amount. I think one of them might go, and I think, it probably depend on Eddie. But the problem with letting Willock go is you are letting a better player go as well, who can offer more, and so it's one of them. And obviously, I think Longstaff probably is he quite half the money of Willock, nearly. But you probably have to weigh that up. But yeah, you're probably getting half the money. But then again, you're keeping Willock, who can start a game for you. Whereas, do you really want Longstaff starting next season? Probably not many times.
No, he's got Miley as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, a couple more links that you've touched on and you've been talking about, Graeme. Fikayo Tomori, AC Milan aren't in Europe this season. It seems like, and the reports are, a bit of a fire sale with lots of players being linked with moves. Reinders already agreeing to move to Man City as well. Fikayo Tomori, Newcastle United have been interested in. We've been linked with him quite a lot in the last year. Do you see that one potentially materialising?
Well, I think AC Milan's an interesting one because I say I'm not sure I'd describe it as a fire sale. It's an Allegri sale because they're making room for what Allegri wants to do. Let's not forget Max Allegri's gone in there. Brilliant appointment from AC Milan to get him back. Within 18 months, I think we're going to be talking AC Milan back at the top of the Serie A, or challenging anyway. But let's not forget about Malik Thiaw as well, AC Milan.
Yeah. That one here.
I personally think Thiaw's a slightly better fit to what Eddie would want. Thiaw's a brilliant young player. He really is. Tomori, don't get me wrong, I think would be... I think it'd be a very, very solid signing. He's a very good player. Tomori, he's been really good in Europe since he's been there for AC Milan. He's a very good player, Tomori. I like him a lot. And if you were to get either AC Milan defender, I think that would really enhance Newcastle's squad massively. If you got either of them, I think they like them both. Obviously, Tomori would be a bit cheaper than Thiaw, but both being made available, so both are available.
There were rumours just from reports in Italy that due to AC Milan's poor season and Malik Thiaw spent quite a bit of time on the bench towards the back end of the season, that his fee potentially would come down. We were linked in the summer with a 30 to 35 million pound move that didn't materialise. So they were saying anything around 25 million. Do you think that could potentially materialise? Or do you think that's too cheap for Malik Thiaw?
Yeah, I think it'd be too German, isn't he? German national Thiaw. Yeah. That didn't happen last summer because Milan persuaded him to stay. He was coming. So we know he quite likes the idea of coming to Newcastle. We're talking 25, 30 million for both players, that sort of region. Again, not an awful lot of money really, especially for two players who, you're going to be wanting this next centre half to come in. You're really wanting this player to make Fabian Schär that bit part player next season. Nothing to do with Fabian Schär and how he's playing, but Newcastle ideally don't want Fabian Schär to be a starter next season. Really, you want him to play about a dozen games. That's the way it's going. But let's see who they manage to bring in. I think someone like a Thiaw, a young player, that I think he ticks an awful lot of boxes for Eddie Howe. A tremendous young player. But they again do bring in someone like Tomori, who's Premier League tried and tested. Again, not a bad age. England international. Could be a very astute signing himself.
Did it get that far with Thiaw? Because I know, like we're focused on the generational talent at Crystal Palace in Mark A at the time. So, because we thought ourselves were heading down that direction. We even had a specialist in talking about Malik Thiaw, but then all behind the scenes it was all gay.
Milan pulled the plug on Thiaw. So did it really? When Newcastle doing both, probably argue with the wood because we're seeing that a lot now at the moment with clubs that are doing multiple deals. Chelsea doing Gittins and Garnacho. Are they taking them both? Probably not. Arsenal talking to Guy Cords and Sesko. Are they doing them both? Probably not. So it's a common practice now.
Okay. There's a couple of other defenders to go on to, but we'll use a few questions from the chat because they may well cover a couple of the other defenders that we were going to cover. So, what questions have we got, Gaz?
I mean, we've got 58 questions in the chat, and I know we're probably going to really struggle to get through those. But what I was thinking, Graeme, we've never done this before. And if you don't want to do it, that's absolutely fine. But I thought maybe I could say a player's name, and 10 being they're absolutely going to sign for Newcastle. I think you're definitely going to get them, and 1 being you've got absolutely no chance. Don't even go there. I was thinking maybe if I read the player's name out, you just give me a figure, and we just kind of like okay, and then we know ballpark
no
what we're talking
go
about.
Okay. Yeah, no problems, no problems.
Right. We've already kind of touched on this, but we didn't get a definitive answer on it. Jadon Sancho.
4.
Okay.
And we already know the reasons why.
We do. Oscar Bob.
3.
James Mattison.
I'd say if he stays in England, 6.5, 7. But I don't think he'll stay in England. I think he's 8 out of 10 going to Germany.
Chris Uche.
Yes, the player who's been linked to Leeds United. He plays in Spain. This boy, doesn't he? I can't remember which club he's at. He's a centre midfielder. I don't see why Newcastle would need Uche. It's the same one, isn't it? I'm thinking of the Spanish-based lad.
Yeah,
centre midfielder. Yeah, 2.
James Trafford.
Pete's favourite goalkeeper section.
You might laugh, but it's a priority position for us.
Yeah,
we've all agreed it is.
We do.
It might not be for you, but it definitely is to us this summer.
It is. Hey guys, when I was on in August, I said the goalkeeper is a big thing, and I was lambasted. Nice to see you're all on my bandwagon now.
No, you're on ours now because you didn't want to talk about goalkeepers. Now we do, so you're on our bandwagon.
Yeah. But last August, I told you Eddie wanted a new goalkeeper. I told you that last August, Pete, and you didn't want to know. And I told you he wanted a goalkeeper, and he still very much does. James Trafford is a player Newcastle have done an awful lot of work on. There are other players in the market. I think James Trafford to Newcastle is 8 out of 10.
Higher.
Okay. Higher, yeah, hopefully, yeah. Let's see any other players here. There is a load of them.
I would my warning with James Trafford. There are other goalkeepers available who I think are a bigger upgrade on Nick Pope than James Trafford would be.
Some of them are like Cobble are very, very expensive.
There'll be more coming up. I know a couple of them are in there because I highlighted them. Karim Adeyemi.
2.
Okay. Let's see. Bobby Clark, former Newcastle player.
Yeah. I haven't heard his name come up. Don't think he's lighting him up in Salzburg, is he, in Austria? 2.
So, yeah. Jean-Philippe Mateta.
I'll base that on the fact that Daz will start crying if I keep saying Isak's going to leave. So basing that Isak's going to stay, 1 out of 10 he ends up at Newcastle.
Is he linked to Man United?
He is. He's an option there for Manchester United.
Mateta.
We haven't really talked about United because we should talk more about Manchester to a certain extent because I think they're the team who distract from Newcastle quite a lot. Newcastle are happy that Manchester United have been such an appalling summer in terms of PR. You don't put it out there that your favourites to sign Liam Delap and then not get him. So, Mateta is an option there, but keep an eye on the name that'll keep on coming up is Victor Osimhen, and Newcastle fans are like his name coming up because if his name comes up with Liverpool, that means one thing: it means Mr. Isak will be staying.
Dominic Calvert-Lewin, we have touched on him, but you didn't know him.
I just think it's a no-brainer on the 3. I think a 7.5 out of 10. I think if he comes in, it will be with. I think I'll give you 3 centre forwards.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think he would be the immediate backup to Isak. So I think they'll give him that option to prove himself, and if he's, I don't think it's a bad option on the 3. As you guys in Eddie we trust, as you preach every time I come on the show. So if Eddie wants to do it, guys, who are we to argue with him?
Yeah, no, and we've said this previously, haven't we, Pete? We've said, Dominic Calvert-Lewin is a third choice striker. As long as we bring in someone who's ultimately back up to Isak,
who can then push on. Who can push on? What happens if Eddie rediscovers that 20 goal a season, man?
What were you going to say, Pete? Sorry.
No. For me, for me, he's certainly not my first choice. Dominic Calvert-Lewin. He hasn't done anything to say that he would be an efficient backup or any better than what Wilson has done since he's come back in. But as you said, coming in as a third choice, I'm fine with, providing that there's another guy in between him and Isak as a genuine option. That's the only way.
Maybe, as I said, maybe Wilson, because between them, you probably would get 30 games between them.
Yeah. We'd hope anyway. But
you would. Yeah. Chris Rigg from Sunderland.
Chris Rigg had a poor second half of the season. Chris Rigg, thought he was chopped around a bit too much, and he was in Job's shadow a little bit. I don't think he'll leave now this summer. I must admit, I think because he's going to get more game time at Sunderland than anywhere else. So this isn't really Newcastle. It's more just in general about Chris Rigg. I think 4 out of 10. I don't think he'll leave for summer now. Or
Chris,
maybe he might sign for someone in State Sunderland, maybe, but unlikely.
Yeah. Go on, Pete. Sorry, mate.
I just want to throw this name out just because it was linked with Alakusha earlier in one of the pictures. Not that one. Adam Marshall. No, thank you. Wilfred Singo, centre back at Monaco, is linked with the move away this summer. Could he potentially be our centre back target?
I don't centre back / right back. He's a good player. Maybe, I would say again, is he one who, if Mitchell was still there, more likely? I think so, especially given his former club. I don't think he's top of your centre half list, even in the foreign targets. 5 out of 10.
Who do you think, in your opinion, Graeme? Who would you say is close to one of the top targets for Newcastle United, just from what you've heard, from what you're hearing, and just in your opinion, as a centre back?
Well, it depends where you're hearing it from. If you're listening to Newcastle, it's Mark Gahey. If you're listening to the rest of football, it wouldn't be. I think someone like someone like a Thiago Tomori, Diamande, Sporting, someone like that.
Diamande.
Yeah, Daz is in now. Yeah.
I've talked about him for the last 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, Ginny Esser just put in there. Remember, we were linked right at the end of the last window with Cap Sober.
Yes.
By Leverkusen. Could that be a possibility?
No, because Jonathan Tah's just left. I don't think they'll let him out. Okay, and because there's Hincapié there. Hincapié's there as well, who I think is probably more likely to go than him. But is Tapsoba left-sided? I believe. Is he left-sided?
Tapsoba's played well. Certainly last season, he played all the way across. When they played a back three, that he played across that line in various different games. So
but that's pointless because he's not going to play in a 3 at Newcastle, is he?
Well, you say that, but in a lot of our big games this season, we played as a 3, particularly against Arsenal. Okay, against Chelsea at home, we set up as a 3. It didn't work last game of the season, but we set up as a 3. So it is something that Eddie Howe's bringing in. It's not our go-to tactic. It's 4-3-3.
I don't necessarily think he's bringing in. I think at last resort maybe, but I don't think he'll be playing a 3. I think he'll play a back 3 next season in less than 5% of your
games. This one came out today, I believe. Teo Hernandez.
1. He's a left back. Why would you sign Teo Hernandez for?
Yeah, no.
Well, you don't, do you? Because you got Dan Burn, but and you got Matt Targett. You got 3. You got 3 off the top of my head. So,
Matt Targett's not staying.
No, that wasn't the question. You said we've only got 1 left back, which isn't true.
Yeah, Lewis Hall is our proper left back. Tino's filled in there, but Tino's a right back.
Yeah, but then got
he's on tackle. He's going to leave. Lewis is out of contract.
Yeah, but that wasn't correct. But anyway, Theo Hernandez, one of the world's best left backs. Absolutely, he didn't have a great season, but no, he won't. He won't be in black and white just because there's not a massive need for him. 1 out of 10, if that.
Madueke.
Interesting. I think he might leave Chelsea. I think. Do I think he's an Eddie Howe type player? He is in theory. There's been issues with him, but he's had a very good season. He was dropped at Christmas time for off-field stuff. I think Madueke's. I think. I don't see Eddie. I don't see Eddie doing it at all with him personally. But he's a good player. 6.5. I think it's possible.
I hope this number's low. It's the first time I've seen it linked, and I wouldn't be the biggest fan of it. Harvey Elliott.
He's again more of a 10, as we know. He's a very good player. I don't think he'd be a bad sign at all, Christopher. I think he would. As I've said on the show numerous times, you're missing that number 10. I think in some of the big games, you desperately need that ability to unlock teams, and it's missing at times for Newcastle. I've said this for years now. You need a proper number 10 in this squad, and I think Newcastle showed that when you went for James Maddison the year before last. So someone at Newcastle agrees with me. Clearly, and I think Eddie Howe is one of those people. So I think Elliott is expensive for what they want. At Newcastle, haven't heard it too much. I'll say a 6, but I think it'd be a very clever sign if you did get him. I think it'd be a good sign. I think he's a phenomenal talent. He really is.
This is a number 10 I could get on board with. Kangin Lee.
2. Not coming.
How about Goncalo Ramos, striker at PSG, Portugal?
Yeah,
you wrote about him. I didn't bring him up tonight, but you have.
He's been offered around. You don't want him to come in, Daz, because if Goncalo Ramos was coming in, it would be his Isaac replacement. So you don't want him to come in.
That's true. There we are.
I'd say so. On the back of that, 2 out of 10. If it was higher than that, you'd be very worried, Daz.
You will know a bit more about this player than most, Graeme. Jack Rudoni from Coventry.
Yeah, very good player, number 10. He is a good player. I think does this tell us something about Newcastle's budget if they're going for Jack Rudoni, a player being looked at by Sheffield United, by Leeds United. You know what? If I was going to the Championship to get a number 10 for Newcastle, there'd be one number 10 I'd go for, and it'd be Gustavo Herrera. An absolutely wonderful footballer who would be legendary status at Tyneside. If Newcastle are going to sign a number 10 from it should be Gustavo Herrera. They should sign. I think Newcastle should sign Gustavo Herrera. Anyway, Rudoni.
He's a good player. I just don't know whether
he's a brilliant player.
I'm just not sure he's
the best player in the Championship by a country mile. By a country mile, is the best player in the Championship.
I think he's a Premier League player. I'm just not sure he's top end Premier League player, and that's the type of player that I think we'd be looking at. I agree with you. I think he's excellent.
Well, you look at Jack Rudoni. You're looking at Jack Rudoni, and he can't list Gustavo Herrera's boots. You are looking at Rudoni. He's not a bad player. He's good. He's good in the air. 5. I think if it turns into a bit of a bidding war, I think Coventry might ask too much money for what Newcastle probably believe in him. But he's a very interesting player. Very interesting player. I'm not saying when I say he can't slag when he can't list Gustavo Herrera's boots, that's not slagging him off as well. Because I think he's a really good player. It just shows you how high they rate Gustavo Herrera because he is a spectacular footballer.
Yeah. Nicholas Kuhn at Celtic. We haven't heard about him for a while.
He didn't have a great end of season, did he, guys? He was good around when I think Newcastle won. The team's looking at him. If I was taking a Celtic player for Newcastle wise, I'd take Maeda. I wouldn't take Kuhn.
Kubo at Sociedad.
2. Not taking him.
Well.
Good player.
Yeah.
Can I just say, Sophie has been an absolute superstar tonight. She's got us to 300 likes.
Oh, brilliant.
Sophie, amazing work.
Thank you,
Thank you very much. I'm just going to take it away just for a second because
go for it.
she said thank you guys. No, thank you for getting onto our chat, our live chat, to get those likes up. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Sophie.
Sorry, Karen.
No, not a problem, mate. Nick Waltermaid from Stuttgart.
Yeah, very gangly looking, big German. Looks a bit like Radoni, actually. Yeah, not my cup of tea personally. And I haven't heard him for Newcastle, so 2 out of 10.
He's been linked with Everton quite heavily, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. Kulusevski.
2. Not okay.
This is an interesting one. The name I've not heard. Jonathan Burkhardt. From, I don't even know where he's from actually, but yeah,
he plays for Mainz. He's one of the leading strikers in the Bundesliga. Plays in a 3, strongly linked with Manchester United because he plays in a very similar system. You can tell I've written a bit about him, guys. I know his people. Again, he won't come to Newcastle as a backup, so I haven't heard Newcastle name at all. So 2 out of 10. But he's a very good player, But he's a centre forward and not one who'll serve as a number 2.
Okay. Anthony Elanga.
The problem with Elanga is that if Nottingham Forest have seen Matthias Cunha, but Forest were willing to pay that money for Cunha, by the way. If they've seen Cunha go for 62, if they've seen Mbeumo go for over 60, how much do you reckon they're going to ask for Elanga? And on that basis, sorry,
they wanted 50 before. Towards the end of the transfer window, we were talking to them. 50 was the quarter, I think.
You didn't agree a fee for him. Didn't agree a fee for him.
No.
And if they've seen, exactly, the precedent's been set. Elanga had as good a season as any of those players. He was brilliant, wasn't he? As we know, guys. They won't be accepting less than 60 for him. But I like him as a player. It's not impossible, I don't think. 5.
Okay. Vlahovic at Juventus.
No, there is a bargain, guys. He might be available for 20 million. He won't accept a wage decrease at Juventus. He might accept a wage decrease if he leaves. Again, he's only coming if Isak leaves. So we'll say a 2 out of 10. If Isak left, maybe a lot higher.
This one, Graeme. We need this one. Magic Mike from AC Milan
to Newcastle. 1.
Oh.
Is that with Chelsea? Is that wrapped up with Chelsea or going?
It's not wrapped up. He's not. But that's one where I don't think he would want to go anywhere but London. From what I understand, he's going to £30 million would get him done. But wages would be very expensive. They really would be. So I just say that because I haven't heard really Newcastle linked with him, to be honest. Yeah, a one for that reason, really.
Foxy, our resident spanner, he's big into all different players throughout Europe and the continent. But he mentions Christian Kofane from Albacete.
I've seen him. I haven't seen him linked to Newcastle. Haven't heard him. So sorry, I'm just getting a message there. Just double checking it wasn't about Newcastle doing Isaac's contract there for you. So it does, unfortunately, isn't it?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Yeah, it might be tomorrow.
It's already done, Graham. It's already done.
Yeah, no, yeah. Why are we talking about it? 1 out of 10.
Okay, we're nearly at the end now, Graeme. Nearly at the end. Chevalier, the goalkeeper.
I don't think I said it has to be 2 out of 10 because I think you're going to get Trafford. So, brilliant player though, brilliant Lucas Chevalier, outstanding young goalkeeper at Lille. Top man, I have to do right by this place. I should know off the top of my head. Yeah, very good player. I think it's someone who Newcastle should be looking at.
Chris, can I just steal in with another
Go
one
for it,
here?
mate. Go for it.
In the Mags Down South chat during this show, they've been bringing this player up and they've been going mad. He was on loan from Porto to Juventus. He's apparently not staying at Juventus. Right winger, Francisco Conceição, Portuguese international.
Why is he not staying?
You tell me.
Because he's not good enough in black and white. So 2 out of 10.
Maybe he just wasn't the right fit, but he is a talented player, and he was playing well at Porto. He's been doing well for Portugal.
Pete, if Newcastle were bringing in a right side, but if they were bringing in a right side who'd failed elsewhere, it's like, come on. It's like you go from nearly getting Mbeumo, one of the best players in the Premier League, to taking a risk on someone who failed at Juventus. No.
Interesting.
This is a previous name we've been linked with, Johan Bakayoko.
Yeah, it's gone cold on him a bit. A few weeks, all blends into one. A few weeks ago, Newcastle did brief it. Cooled on him a bit. Good player. I just don't think he's quite on the radar now. It's a 4 out of 10.
Yeah. Jacob Ramsey, who's been linked. Oh, sorry, Daz. Go on. What you saying, mate?
Shimek Kilchoy, the guy that you brought to our attention, the Turkish lad from Besiktas.
Kilroy.
Yeah. Kilchoy. New agent, actually. New agent who knows Newcastle well. I'd certainly like to see him. I'd like to see someone like that. It's a bit of a risk, though. Do I see Eddie taking that risk? If Mitchell was still there, maybe. I don't think he's an Eddie type signing, but I think he's got a chance of coming to England. 4 out of 10.
Yeah.
Hope he does come to England. I know he's a wonderful talent. Jacob Ramsey. I'm not sure why Newcastle would sign a third left-sider to play. Don't really fit the two in they've got at the moment. I don't think Jacob Ramsey would. He's a brilliant player, Jacob Ramsey, by the way, and I think he's every bit as good as what you've got. But why would you sign a third one? 2 out of 10.
No, Dad, I think Daz was trying to catch me out here.
Yeah.
Whoever put that one on. But I'm going to pinch something off Pete now, Graeme. We mentioned about the right centre-back position. You told us who you felt.
I thought we were going Bonifacio then. All right.
You thought what, sorry?
I thought we were going Bonifacio, Pete's favourite striker.
Come on, disappoint me then, Graeme. Come on, do it.
No. I wanted to ask because, and it kind of came from Fristo Gamer. Thank you for tuning in, Fristo Gamer. We've already spoken a little bit about the right centre back, but if I was to say to you, right, goalkeeper, striker, right winger, not necessarily, and don't worry, we won't hang our hat on this thing. But if you were sitting here as you are right now, which 3 players would you suggest for the goalkeeper, right winger, striker position that we should keep a lookout for, or maybe there might be promising news, there might not be.
Right winger, I would say keep an eye on Jonathan Rowe and the boy Gelly from Nordjylland. Striker, I think you'll do one with DCL. I think you'll do 2. I think you'll do DCL with another. Possibly Abraham, someone like that. Or if you could bring DCL in, can you go younger? Possibly. Trafford, I think, will be the goalkeeper. Maybe number 10. Like if I was Newcastle, I'd be going all out for Gibbs White. But is he attainable? I think he's very expensive, Gibbs White. And with them being in Europe, it's a little bit unlikely. Sorry?
I was just saying, sorry, Graeme. I think Man City have walked away from that potential deal now because of how expensive it could be.
I
don't think Man City walk away from any deals because they're too expensive, really. But I think let's not forget that they're signing Cherky, who's by the way, what a player he is. He is already. When he comes in, he'll be arguably the most skillful player in the Premier League. But I don't need to tell you guys yet how good he is. But let's not forget our player we mentioned earlier, Lucas Paqueta, who will be available. Man City love Paqueta. He will be available. He's going to get off this betting thing, so he'll be available in the month. Keep an eye on him. The McAtee links were interesting. The reason I was a bit low on McAtee for Newcastle, not that Newcastle don't like him and he doesn't like them, but I just don't see where McAtee is going to start. I don't really see him playing right wing for Newcastle. I'd love to see him. Think they do great work for you, but he's a number 10. I don't really think there's a role there for him. So yeah, keep an eye on Rowe and Egley, the big Norwegian in Norgesland. He's a wonderful talent. Could we see someone like that? Wouldn't rule it out. I said Trafford in goal, and we didn't talk about centre half, did we? Let's see with the centre half. The centre half is a few options there. There really is. I'll say Malik Thiaw for now, but there are a few options out there.
I've got 2 more questions for you, Graeme. Really, really quick ones, because I am conscious we've run over, and really appreciate your time, by the way. Thank you so
problems,
much.
Guys. No problems.
Similarly, who would you say, maybe top 3, because I'm assuming at least 3 will leave. Who would be your 3 that you think will leave Newcastle United? Again, if you've heard anything, or that you feel are most likely. There may be one very unpopular one based on what we were talking about earlier, but maybe not.
If you said to me, will Newcastle lose an Isak or Gordon in the summer? I'd say that's a 6 out of 10. If one of them two, but in general, obviously the players going. I would expect Trippier to go this summer. To be fair, I think it's his run's race now. He's been a brilliant servant, loyal servant, but I think his race has been run now. We'll see. Matt Targett probably will go, and I think we'll probably see. I'd go with Sean Longstaff more likely than Willock. Just I think Eddie won't want to leave the cupboard too bare. It only takes one bad injury to a touchwood that doesn't happen to a centre midfielder, and do you want Longstaff playing 20 games? Probably not. Whereas Willock, you could probably stomach that.
And it wouldn't be, Graeme, a fully loaded transfer show with Graeme Bailey unless we brought up this comment or asked this comment. David H., this is for you. Graeme Bailey, do you still think that Conor Gallagher is better than Joe Linton?
I'd still take Conor Gallagher ahead of him. I thought he was brilliant. If you watched him for Atletico Madrid, I thought he had a brilliant season. I think he's they're very different players, obviously, but I do. Joe Linton's a very good Premier League player. I think Gallagher's got a higher ceiling. I think he's a better footballer. I think he's not as physical as Joe Linton, but hey, I think he's a better footballer. And most people in football outside the Tyneside agree with me.
I've just got to bring up as well, Tino. Thank you so much for the super chat earlier, mate. I'm sorry we didn't get to it earlier. I do apologise. We had a lot to squeeze in, but Tino says, "Hey gents, how's PSR even functional when a big brand club finishing in relegation territory can outspend fees and wages clubs like Villa and Newcastle?" And I'm assuming he's referring to Man United there, but
yeah, in terms of it. So, and one thing I would say about PSR and this stuff. I think Man City would jump on board here, and I know why PIF don't do it because the Saudi links and stuff, and the government and stuff, and I'd like to hear PIF more vocal on this. I think they need to be. I think PIF should be riding Man City's coattails here against the Premier League, and but I know why they're not. They've got a lot of things to happen, the new stadium and other things, and it probably doesn't help them overall as a club for them to be preaching about things like that, but. But it's a nonsense PSR. We know that if the club have got the money, they should be able to spend it. I think it's horrible that Newcastle and Villa are not able to rub shoulders with some of these teams. Look at what Chelsea are doing. Chelsea, the way they do it with Strasbourg is you have to admire them to a certain degree. Look what they're going to do now. They're going to sell Tosin, Chalobah, Badiashile, and Disasi. They've got 4 players there, 4 centre halves alone, who they could sell. 2 of them, Tosin and Chalobah, for clear profit. They're going to clear more than 100 million on those 4 alone, and it's just how it's meant to be done. Yeah, completely don't agree with it, as you know, guys. I think it's a nonsense, but let's see what happens. I think Man City, when they win their case, they won't get any charges. I think underneath will help Newcastle because I think it'll fire a shot across the bows of the Premier League that your rules are not fit for purpose.
Yeah, we're anticipating that one. There were some reports out yesterday that it's likely to be that Man City win that case, but Yeah, you're right.
It's not a debt. No, Man City already know they can out in terms of lawyers, etc. They've told the Premier League to take it to the High Court, and it's staggering to know this. But Man City have got deeper pockets in the Premier League.
Yeah,
when you're going to be one winner there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the Premier League do not want their cases going to the High Court because their rules will be taken to the cleaners.
Yeah,
they're not fit for purpose.
Everything will be out in the open if it goes to the High Court, and that's what the Premier League don't want. They don't want their kind of dirty laundry kind of shared out in public, and so that's why they probably won't take it any further. There's been rumours that there's been a deal agreed between City and the Premier League, which wouldn't surprise me. I don't know whether that's true. It wouldn't surprise me. I
don't think City need to agree with it.
Do you think they've outright won then?
I think they're very, very confident.
Oh.
Don't think there's any issue with them losing points or anything. Don't think they'll lose points. Personally, from what I'm told, I think from what I'm told, they're very, very confident.
Wow, interesting. But lads, I think we'll kind of put a stop on that there because I am conscious that Graeme was only meant to be joining us for an hour, and we're an hour and 50 in. So we massively appreciate you joining us, Graeme. It's been an absolute fascinating chat, as it always is. Always a pleasure to have you on, mate. Just share for people where they can find you and where you do your work.
Yeah, at Graeme Bailey. Obviously, everything on Twitter. Newcastle fans, take a check of Geordie Boot Boys. I'm on there weekly and quite a lot. Very good site run by the lads, Newcastle fans as well, so don't have to worry about that. It's not a bunch of Southerners, it is Newcastle fans running that site. So a good bunch of lads. Hopefully you might see some of them on the show in not too distant future. But yeah, and I'll put me down for next week. For as soon as Isak signs that new deal, I'll come on with Daz next week.
Definitely, special.
Not a problem.
I'm looking forward to it, Graeme.
There's a lot. I hope we do. There's a lot of Isaac stuff to come up, and I hope we can be a bit more positive next time. I know it was in light of the Mbeumo situation stuff, but I must admit, I'm disappointed. I'm from the viewpoint where I think I'm disappointed with Newcastle because I think a deal like that should have been done. I'm disappointed by Newcastle. I'm disappointed for the fans where don't moan about what the player wants in terms of wages. That's not the thing. The fans should be saying why we're not rubbing short. Why we're not bidding for him. He is worth that. He's one of the best players in the Premier League. But I'm frustrated for Newcastle fans in that regard. I think you should have gotten Mbeumo. You should have.
I think we all would have wanted him, but let's put this into perspective, Graeme. Like we said right at the top of the show, we're 4 days into the transfer window. There's no point pointing the finger and banging the drum about why this player or that player hasn't come in.
Yeah, but no, Peter, he's your top target for the right hand side. You've known it for months.
But as we've already said, Graeme, is that Eddie Howe has multiple targets. We don't always get the first choice target. We would want that first choice target. I think Eddie Howe would be frustrated at the fact that he hasn't got Bryan Mbeumo. But it won't be the end of the world. We will get a right winger in.
Of course it's not. Of course it's not the end of the world. Of course it's not.
I think it's important, especially for the Newcastle fans, because particularly on social media, there is sort of an outcry of frustration when we don't get someone that we've been targeted with. And I think it's important that we remember that it's only 4 days of the window and that we've got plenty of signings yet to still be made. And each one of those signings will be quality players that will make us ready for the Champions League. I completely trust Eddie Howe 100%. He's given me no reason not to. In fact, he's gone above and beyond of what he's done this season with this current squad of players. Like we cannot get too downbeat at the fact that we haven't got Bryan Mbeumo as much as we wanted it. We all wanted it. But it's important that we keep that in mind as well with a very important window ahead.
Yeah, no, agree, Pete. In Eddie, we trust, unless he brings in DCL.
I was going to say that. Yeah.
I knew you were lining up for that.
Well, when Pete was saying that, I was going to say there's 2 or 3 players who Daz isn't on board with here. Even if Eddie does sign, there's 2 or 3 who Daz doesn't want.
Right. Also, just to note as well, and there's been at least about 3,000 people watching, 3,000 views of this show already as we were still live. But we were during the middle of the day, we were 5,000 away from 2 million views. So I would imagine in the next day or so we will hit 2 million views unloaded. And we just want to say a special thanks to everyone that has watched us and all the guests, including Graeme, that's come on with us multiple times. Thanks for sticking with us, and a lot more to come. Unloaded right through the summer, including the Isak new contract show.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers, guys.
We'll be back with more in the coming days and the weeks to come. So stick with us on Loaded Mag NUFC. It is going to be a busy summer. Graeme, legend as always. Thank you for joining us.
Cheers, guys. I'll be back soon when we get something a bit more cheerful to talk about. Maybe Marcus Tavernier, and if we do him, I'll wax lyrical for you about him.
Nice. We'll book you in. That's it. We're back on Sunday for squad game. Keep an eye on for that. Sunday morning, 11 o'clock. See you soon.